ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां
समारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्
ॐ सहना भवतु
सहनौ भवतु सहनौ
सहनौ
भुनक्तु
वीर्यं
सह वीर्यं
कर्वावहै
करवावहै
तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा
तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा
विद्विषावहै
विद्विषावहै
शान्ति
ॐ
शान्ति
शान्ति
शान्तिः
शान्तिः
That's it. Om Namah Shivaya. Good morning. So we had completed the Katha Upanishad in the last class. And today we will take up one of the larger Upanishads, the Taitriya Upanishad. So I'll start off with briefly going back to the very basics because it's been some time since we have done that. So the basic scripture for all of us, for the Sanatana Dharmas, the basic scripture is the Veda, the basic source of knowledge or instrument of knowledge, as we call it. And the Veda is classified into two, the Karma Kanda and the Jnana Kanda, also called Veda Purvaha and Veda Antaha. So in the Karma Kanda, of course, essentially we talk about karma. And karma is classified into three: Kayika Karmani, which is bodily action; Vachika Karmani, verbal action; and Manasika Karmani, mental action, which we also call Upasanam or meditation. So these three types of karmas. Remember that Upasana, that is Manasika Karma, is also karma only. So karma is essentially Kaika, Vachika, and Manasika. Upasana is only a name for the Manasika Karma. Through all these karmas, these karmas are done for the acquisition of certain phalam, right? The sadhyam. And therefore the karmas are the means and they are the sadhana. So you do various sadhana for achieving various sadhyam. Thus, since there are three types of karma, there are three types of sadhyam also. So there is a sadhyatrayam, three sadhyams associated with sadhana trayam. Now, what are the goals of these three sadhanas? What are the sadhyatrayam? So one says Shastra is Upadhi Praptihi. So that Praptihi can be taken as acquisition of a better body, a better mind, refining sense organs, and also improvement of mental focus, etc. Therefore, those karmas which are prescribed in Karma Kanda for improving the physical health, the mental health, the intellectual health, and the emotional health, right? These are called the Upadhi Praptihi Karma. So these improvements, refinements can be in this life. But of course, it can also be taken to mean acquiring a better upadhi in the next life. So acquiring better physical capabilities, better mental capabilities, better intellectual and emotional health in the next life. So the next upadhi will be version 2 of this one, improved version. So that is the first goal, upadhi prapti. Okay, then there is the Vishaya Prapti, acquisition or improvement of the Vishayas, the objects of enjoyment which I have in this life. So better house, better job, better relatives, etc. Right. Then there is a Lokaha Prapti. So improvement of the environment in which my upadhi it will be there. And the Vishayas will also be there. So there will be an interaction between my upadhis and the Vishayas. And therefore improvement of both. Plus the uh, loka itself, the environment itself will be improved. And if I cannot improve the environment and I cannot improve the Vishaya, then the job is for the next life where I will replace the loka itself. So I might replace the this loka here, Swarga loka, where I have better environment. And Shastra says that happiness is optimal only if all these three are optimal. So Upadhi should be optimal, Vishaya should be optimal, and the Loka should be optimal. All three are favorable. But as we go through life, most of us have already learned that all the sadhyams have inherent deficiencies. Right? So all the sadhyams are dosha yuktaha, connected with deficiencies. Why is that so? Because all three are prayas and none of them is shreyas. So we have talked about this before. When you do an inquiry, what are the dosha trayams of all the sadhyams? What are the defects of all the goals, of these three goals? The first one we know, dukkha, mishri, tattva. There are three types of sorrow associated with any worldly goal. So dukkha, mishri, tattva. What are they? The acquisition, pain is there in acquiring the object. Pain is there in preserving the object. And finally, when the object is lost, there is pain. Why mishri? Why mixed? Because the acquisition of the object gives you pleasure also. But to acquire that object, you have to go through this acquisition, preservation, and loss processes and the pain associated with these three. Therefore, dukkha mishri tattva. Dukkha sukha mishri tattva. It is mixed with sorrow and pleasure. That is the first defect. Then there is something which we call in Shastram atripti karatvam. They can never give you tripti, total fulfillment. Why? Because once you acquire a goal, you will find that there is always a better goal. So if you buy your first Maruti car, you will find that there is always a Honda car. If you buy the Honda car, you will find there is a Volkswagen. If you buy the Volkswagen, you will find there is a BMW. So no amount of objects can give you total fulfillment because we always compare them with the better object. So that's the second one. And the third one is bandhaka tattva. Whenever you use an object for your enjoyment, it may start as a luxury, but you will soon get dependent upon them, which means that the more objects you acquire, the more you are addicted to them, the more you are dependent upon them. And that dependence will give rise to fear of loss. So that is also a defect because it takes away from your pleasure. Therefore, karma kanda can give you only prayas, but not shreyas. For shreyas, one needs to come to jnana kanda. How do you distinguish between prayas and shreyas? Anybody? We saw this in Katha Upanishad also.
Prayas means these worldly, objects where we can get happiness. And Shreyas means parloka, whatever we are going to get the happiness in the other lokas after this life is over for the next life.
Okay. Anybody else?
Raviji, may I try?
Please, Dr. Rajanji.
See, it is a base of short-term versus a long-term gain. That is probably the real difference between prayas and shreyas.
Yeah. So, I'll give you an example. While coming to the class, I have to talk for an hour, but I've got a big, container of strawberry ice cream at home. So prayers would mean that I eat the ice cream. I get the pleasure, but what happens is my throat gets affected and I cannot speak. Shreyas is what I ignore the ice cream and I do my class. So ultimately, in English, if you want to translate, what is pleasant is prayers. What is good for you is shreyas. And here in this Shastric context, what is good for the jiva is always moksha. Therefore, in the Shastric context, shreyas means moksha and prayas means pleasant things arising out of your actions. Therefore, karma kanda can give you only pleasant things, good karmic fruits. But karmic fruit is not moksha. Therefore, for moksha, for shreyas, one needs to come to jnana kanda. So that is the essential difference. So, Jasmine ji, I hope you are clear about the difference.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now, the question is the one who wants to come to Shreyas is looking for a goal which is not the karma kanda goal. So karma kanda goal we said had three defects, right? And therefore the one who comes to jnana kanda is looking for a defect-free goal, which we call moksha, and which Shastram says Brahmavit apnoti paramam. The one who knows Brahman becomes Brahman. So this defect-free goal, which is Brahman, also called Atma, also called Shreyas, is also called Moksha, right? Liberation. Now the question is where to find that Brahman. And a lot of people do a lot of sadhana to find Brahman, including meditation and samadhi and whatnot. And Shastram says that all this is a waste. Why? You can never acquire that Brahman because Tat Tvam Asi. Tat Brahma Tvam Asi. That Brahman you are. Where is the question of finding yourself? You can only claim that you are Brahman. You can do all the karma you want. You can do all the meditation you want. You will never get moksha until you know that that Brahman you are. That is moksha. And therefore, what is the problem? The problem is that I have a self-image. So, you know what? Finite person, subject to colds and coughs, born, gets married, has children, children talk back to you, you get upset, and finally you die. This is my idea of myself. And what Shruti tells me, what the Upanishad tells me, is completely different from this idea of myself. And therefore, one needs to find out which idea is correct. Whether my idea of myself is correct, whether my self image is correct, or what Shruti is telling me about myself is correct. This is an enquiry is needed. To find out anything, you need an enquiry. Now, to enquire, you need a source of knowledge, a pramana. And normally, we use five pramanams, the five sense organs, for ascertaining any knowledge about any object, including the external world. But I, if I am Brahman, that Brahman is something which is not accessible to any of these five pramanams, any of my five sense organs. And therefore, the pramanam that is needed is called Vedanta, the words of the Upanishad. So, Upanishad Vakyam, which we call Shabda Pramanam. Right? Now, again, it is not sufficient to understand that Upanishad statements are the source. Those Upanishad statements have to be delivered in a proper traditional manner. right? Because normally when you teach something, I say this is a rose. So what is the dichotomy here? There is a duality. I am the knower of the rose, and the rose is the known object. There's a division. And in case of Atmagyanam, there is no such division. So if the teaching is not proper, you will know that there is Brahman. But you will never be convinced that that Brahman is you, right? And therefore, it is a competent teacher alone who can make the Upanishad literally talk to you, right? That is why in almost every Upanishad, in the Gita also, you will find that the advice is go to a teacher and do Shravanam. Listen to him. Nobody talks about reading. So listen to him. Now, this teacher has to use a traditional method to convey the idea of the Upanishad to you. And for this, he uses the Shadlingani, the six factors which are necessary to arrive at the essence of the teaching of a text. The essence, the primary teaching of the text, also called Tatparyam in Sanskrit. So the Tatparyam of the Shastram is revealed to you by the teacher only, right? Or more appropriately, the teacher will help you in discovering for yourself the Tatparyam. Why do we word it? Why do I put it in that manner? That the teacher will help you in discovering the Tatparyam. What is the Tatparyam? Tattamasi. You are already Brahman. And therefore, you have to discover that for yourself. The teacher can tell you Tattvamasi, you are Brahman. But the discovery of that for yourself becomes Aham Brahma Asmi. That I am Brahman has to become a fact for me. And this is one of the most difficult facts to assimilate. Since I am, you know, brainwashed, life after life, lifetime after lifetime, Janma after Janma, I have come believing God that I am a finite person, subject to birth and death. And therefore, even if the teacher tells you once, you may understand intellectually, but there will be lots of doubts. And therefore, this teacher has to consistently, again and again, convey to you the same idea, not in the same words, in different words, giving different examples, using different texts. That is why, even though Tattvabodha is sufficient for Atmajnana, we go on to various texts, Bhagavad Gita, other Prakarana Granthas, Upanishads, and finally Brahma Sutra. Then advanced texts also we see, right? What is the idea? Vedanta Vichara, the Vedantic analysis of Vedantic statements, which is called Mimamsa. Remember, the approach to the teaching is not academic because your aim is not to become a scholar in Shastric language or Shastric texts. This Mimamsa, the analysis, is aimed at only one, focused on only one thing, one idea. Every word of the Shastra must be clearly understood in relation to the whole. Once that is clear, then only what I am becomes clear to me. What is my nature becomes clear to me only when I understand every word correctly as intended. And therefore, the knowledge of your nature comes through Shravanam, never in Samadhi. If you don't get this knowledge in Shravanam, you will never get the knowledge. And therefore, Shravanam is the only way. And why do we say Shravanam? Because the teacher who knows that he is Brahman, he alone can convince you that you are Brahman. If I am not convinced about my status, How would I convince you? And therefore, we have this process. Jnana Yoga consisting of Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasana. What are these stages? Shravanam gives knowledge. But the knowledge gained through Shravanam is interwoven with your own doubts. So Shravanam gives Jnanam, but it is Samshaya Sahita Jnanam. Knowledge with doubts. Then Mananam process has to be begun, where you analyze each word, talk to the teacher about your doubts, talk to your friends about doubts, contemplate upon it yourself. Once you are convinced that what the Shastram is telling you, what the teacher has told you is essentially nothing but what the Shastram has told you. So, teacher is important for conveying. But remember, if the teacher deviates from Shastric words, Shastric ideas, then the process is invalidated. And therefore, once the teacher who has conveyed the words of the Shastram to you correctly, you have understood those words of Shastram. Those words have been validated by your intellectual enquiry processes. Then no doubts will remain. So you have arrived at the second stage. From Samshaya Sahita Jnana, knowledge with doubts, you have gone to Samshaya Rahita Jnana, knowledge without any doubts. Again, I will repeat, there can be no experience, physical or mental or spiritual, which can validate the knowledge gained through Shravanam. Why? Because the process is completely intellectual. All doubts are in your intellect. They can be sorted out only by correct thinking, again, the intellect. Right. So I might add here that very many well-known philosophers, rishis, like Patanjali, rishi, for example, concentrated on nirvikalpa samadhi. Right? Now, samadhi does not clear any intellectual doubts. Samadhi does not give any knowledge. And that is why you will find that if you study Yoga Sutras closely, you will find that they are Dvaitic in nature. Duality is steeped over there. Because for clearing doubts, you require Shravana. Manana. Then the third process. Once you have arrived at Samshaya Rahita Jnana, knowledge free from doubts, one would think that you are a jnani. That is correct. You are a jnani. But because of lifetimes of dwelling in, a different format, thinking that you are finite, there are some habitual thinking patterns etched into your brain. So this is called viparita bhavana. And we all know that when any situation comes in front of us, how you react to the situation is rarely ever through conscious thinking. Usually it is from the subconscious mind. And therefore, the Viparita Bhavana, which is internalized in your subconscious mind, that is what gives you the reactions. And therefore, even if you are intellectually convinced there is samshaya rahita jnanam that you are Brahman, you will still feel some disturbances because of the effects of the Viparita Bhavana coming from your subconscious mind. Therefore, the third process is called Nididhyasana. The focus of Nididhyasanam is to dwell on the teaching. Essential teaching is only one, Tvam Tat Tvamasi, right? So dwell on the teaching until it is internalized, until it goes into your subconscious mind and becomes Aham Brahmasmi. When that happens, the Viparita Bhavana is gone. Then there is consistency between what you know and what you are. Until that, what you know is at the Samshaya Rahita Jnanam stage. What you are is because of Viparita Bhavana, which is subconscious. And this Nididhyasanam can be done in 4 or 5 ways. One is after you have completed Shravanam Mananam, you go back to Shravanam. You will find that the second time, third time, fourth time Shravanam is much, much more meaningful. Then the second is by going back over the teaching of the class, right? Because in the class, you would have hopefully made some notes. So reading those notes and recalling the class is another form of nididhyasana. A third one is to try to put what you have learned into your own words, making summaries without referring too much to the class notes, making summaries of your own, discussing it with your friends and figuring out is this summary adequate or not. So writing those summaries is another method. One more method is if you have other students with you, you can discuss between them. That is always clear discussion which is possible. You may have some ideas which others don't have. Others may have some clarity which you don't have. That also is nididhyasana. Of course, the class Ravanam is always another method. But the best method that I find is to teach. So that is another method. You can opt to teach, of course, after knowing that you are competent to teach. You can opt to teach because what happens in teaching, you are forced before every class to revise the subject matter. Think of any possible questions that may happen and answer them. Keep the answers ready. Therefore, teaching is one of the best methods of nididhyasana. Another method is to look at the Jivan Mukta, whom you know, and try to imitate that Jivan. So Krishna says that in chapter 2. He gives you all the indicate lakshanam of a Jivan Mukta. Try to fake it till you make it, is the idea. Then there is, of course, the more formal samadhi process. So there is this sitting meditation. Okay, this is not because the Nididhyasanam which we have talked about, they're all meditation so far, all those 5, 6 which I've talked about. But you can do it in any position, walking, lying down, anything. But there is Samadhi Abhyasa, the proper formal meditation, which we saw in chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita. Vivikta Desha Sukhasana. You go to a lonely place, you sit down in a proper asana, you focus your mind. So Samadhi Abhyasa, Samadhi here just means focusing. Abhyasa is the exercise of focusing. The question is, what should you focus on? So, this is a very nice method of addressing any weaknesses which you have. Right? What is my problem? Anger. Then I should meditate upon the related teaching. So, Krishna says somewhere in chapter 2, what are the problems with anger? What it leads to. So, anger, desire, greed, all these are covered in various aspects of the teaching. So in one session, you decide, okay, I am prone to anger. So let me, recall those teachings which are related to anger, which tell me how they are bad for me and how I can handle them. So in such a case, you will have to do some research before sitting down for meditation, get all those texts into place, and then meditate upon it. Right? So if remember that this nididhyasanam is not for moksha. Right? The moment you say that I am going to get nididhyasanam for and do it for moksha, you have already failed. Why is that so?
I'm already free. I'm already.
Yes, because Shravanam has taught you that you do not need to be free, that moksha is an established fact for you. And Mananam has made that knowledge firm. Therefore, your knowledge is that I am free in spite of any situation which I face. Shravanam gives you the knowledge. Mananam gives you the conviction that knowledge is correct. Nididhyasanam is not meant for conviction. Nididhyasanam is not meant for moksha. Remember that all experiences belong to anatma, and therefore we accept that mystic experiences can exist. But we do not accept that they have any connection to Atma Jnana. The Jnani does not need any mystic experiences. He may have, but he does not need because he is already liberated. Right? Therefore, what is Nididhyasanam? It is meant for reducing the FIR. And it will be a very gradual process as I examine my weaknesses, as I try to imbibe the teachings deeper and deeper. With every session of Nididhyasana, the teaching should be driven into my subconscious mind. Right? So remember that for spiritual growth, these three are necessary. But it is not necessary to study Bhashya. You know, even the study of the Prasthana Trayam will take several years if done in a systematic manner. So we know, for example, that is taking us several years. Right? One session which we have finished has taken 6 years. This session also is close to that. And therefore, if you need to study Bhashya, you have to finish the Moolam first. And I don't think it's necessary to study Bhashya because Bhashyam of any text, of any Upanishad, requires a good knowledge of Sanskrit grammar. And of course, it is good for those who ultimately want to teach the Shastra as part of their Nididhyasana. But if you are not studying Bhashyam by itself, which we are not, though I do include the Bhashyam ideas, remember we have not studying Bhashyam at all. Because Bhashyam study means you read the Bhashyam text, you come to the etymology of the grammar of the words, the grammatical breakups, all those we do, which we are not doing because you are not the target audience. Your idea is not to become great teachers. Your idea is to get moksha. So the whole process is aimed at people who want to get moksha. Okay. Talking of Bhashyams, the Bhashyam is basically commentary. So we should have some idea of what are the types of commentaries which are there in Shastra. So there are commentaries in verse form and there are commentaries in prose form. So the metrical commentaries, the commentaries in verse form, largely two. They are called Vartikas and Karikas. Okay. What is a Karika? It is defined. Alpa aksharatve sati bahu artha gyapakaha slokaha. Alpa aksharatve sati. Being limited in words. Bahu artha gyapaka shlokaha. So shlokaha, it's a metric verse which is very limited in words, but conveys bahu artha, a very deep meaning. It's called karika. Mandukya karika, for example, right? The the Upanishad is only 12 verses. The karika extends into 3 chapters, 4 chapters. Then, what is the Vartika? It's different from the Kartika, from the Karika. So he says, Ukta, Anukta, Druktana, Chinta, Yatra Pravartate, Tam Grantaha, Vartika, Prahu. That is the definition. Very nice definition. What is it? Ukta, what is said. Anukta, what is not said. So we're talking about the basic text which is being commented upon. What is said in the text? Uktaha. What is not said in the text? Anuktaha. What is wrongly said in the text or capable of multiple interpretations, capable of wrong interpretations? Duruktana Chinta Yatra Pravartate, which deals with these 3 areas. Tam Grantaha, that text, Vartikaha Prahu, is called a Vartika. So there are 2 types of Vartika, of metric commentaries, verse form commentaries, Vartika, Karika, and then there are prose commentaries. So prose commentaries are in many forms. Basically, there are 3: Vritti, Vyakhyanam, and Bhashyam. So Bhashyam and Vyakhyanams are elaborate commentaries. What is the difference? Bhashyam is on a commentary on any text, Mula Grantha, which is in Sutra form. Vyakhyanam is a commentary on any text other than Sutra form. Now, this should, if you are thinking, following what I'm saying, some of you may get a question. What is that?
Difference between Karika and Sutra maybe because both are limited in words and conveying deep meaning.
No, one is in prose, one is in what they call it, poem form. We are talking about prose.
Bhagavad Gita is not in a sutra form, and still they are bhashyams.
I'd say that. What is that you're saying?
I'm saying Bhagavad Gita is not in a sutra form, and still
Very good.
they are bhashyams.
Very good. So Bhagavad Gita is not in Sutra form. And therefore, literally speaking, correctly speaking, Bhagavad Gita Bhashyam must be called the Bhagavad Gita Vyakhyanam, because Gita is not in Sutra form. Similarly, Upanishads are not in Sutra form. Therefore, any commentary in Upanishads also Vyakhyanam. So, actually speaking, literally speaking, there are only 2 Bhashyams: Yoga Sutra, Brahma Sutra. I mean, anything which is Sutra form, but the 2 famous ones, Yoga Sutra and Brahma Sutra. All the rest are Vyakhyanams. But conventionally, we use the term Bhashyam for anything associated with Sutra, with Veda also, with Bhagavad Gita also. But this is only a technical difference. It is not being used as a convention. Okay. Now, what is the definition of a Vakya? Vyakhyanam. It should have 5 components. One is Padacheda, and one is Vigraha. What is Padacheda?
Sandhi breakup?
Sandhi breakup. Because most Sanskrit words have sandhis. The breaking up of the words is called Padacheda. The second idea is there is something called Vigraha Vakya. For that, I'll have to explain a little bit. Sandhis is a combination. Sandhi means a combination. Right? So in Sanskrit language, there are loose combinations and strong combinations. So, sorry. Sandhi is normally used for a loose combination. For a strong combination, we use another word called samasa, not samosa, samasa. Breaking the loose combination, that is to say, breaking the sandhi, is called padachedaha. Breaking the samasa, the strong combination, is called vigraha vakyam. What is the difference between loose and strong combinations? In a loose combination, you can see that all the words they retain their case endings, which in Sanskrit we call vibhakti. In English, you call it case ending. And therefore, when you break it up, when you do the sandhi breakup or the cheda, you will find the case ending remains the same, remains intact. So, what is case ending called in English grammar? Remember that it's not a real similarity because the case ending is attached to the word in Sanskrit, while it is separate in English grammar. It's called a preposition. Right? Let's give an example. Guru Brahma. What are the two words?
Guruhu
Guruhu.
Guru
is
and Brahma. Right? So Guru Brahma, you can look at the word and know there are two words, Guru and Brahma. Brahma. So it's visible. So when you break up the sandhi, it becomes Guru Brahma. But that's a sandhi. It's a loose combination. But in a strong combination, samasa, it is not obvious when you look at the words because the case endings, the vibhakti remains hidden. And therefore, in a vyakyanam, in a proper vyakyanam has to give the vigraha vakyam, which is the separating the words and showing the hidden case endings. This is getting very technical.
yes.
You don't want more of this?
If you can again explain.
Yes, yes.
Okay, let me then, I've given you the example for Sandhi breakup, right? Guru Brahma. That is clear enough. So let me
Yes.
give you a Vigraha Vakya. So there is a prayer. Anek janma samprapta karma bandha vidahine. Remember?
Guru Stotra.
Mhm.
So when you look at that word, at this particular compound word, it's one compound word. Aneka janma samprapta karma bandha vidahine. It's a samasa. It's a strong combination. You don't know the case endings. You can't just break by saying aneka janma samprapta. That is not the correct vigrahavakyam. It is anekeshu janmasu, in many janmas, sampraptana karma rupana bandhanam vidahine. You are supplying the case endings. Shu, su, anam, rupanam, bandhanam, right? So this method of revealing the hidden case endings, that is Vigrahavakyam. And these are widely employed in Sanskrit. Of course, in English also we have. Of course, they don't have the same punch. For example, when you say toothpaste, right? It is actually a samasa. Why? If you have to expand that into correct English, what would you say?
Paste for the
Paste.
tooth.
Teeth.
Paste for the tooth, right? So you have to add that middle word. That's exactly what we're doing here. Tooth powder, powder for the tooth. Turmeric powder, powder of turmeric, right? All these prepositions you are adding. That is exactly what we did here. Only thing you're familiar with the English, you are not familiar with the Sanskrit. Anyway, so we'll stop there for that. So that is the second one, which is samasa, how it is broken up by this particular process. The third is Vakya Yojana. You will find that in Sanskrit, in texts, the sentence is not in a syntactic order. So you will have missing verbs, you'll have missing adjectives, you'll have missing nouns. For example, tvameva mata, pita tvameva. What is missing?
Asi
My
is
Tvamev
Tvameva
is missing.
my
Asi.
is
Tvameva mata asi, pita tvameva asi. That is Vakya Yojana. You are trying to put in the grammatical phrases necessary to make it a proper grammatic sentence. When what we chant every day, Sadashiva Samarambha, what is missing? From Monday, I worship you. That is missing. So putting this particular thing into order is called Vakya Yojana. Okay. Then there is the Pada Arthaha. You have to give the meanings of the words. And then you have to give Vakya Arthaha, the meanings of the sentences also. That's a very important point. Until you know the word meanings, you can't arrive at a sentence meaning. If one word meaning is incorrectly given, because the words meanings are always contextual. The same word can have different meanings in Sanskrit grammar. If you look at any grammatical text, grammar book, you will find one word will have different meanings. And therefore, the correct meaning has to be extracted from the context. And unless the correct context is taken, the sentence itself is wrong. Therefore, padartha and vakyartha, these are given. Then in the traditional Vyakhyanam, there will be the objections, akshepaha, objections by Purvapakshis. And then for that, you have to give a khandanam or samadhanam, the refutation, the replies. And this is the main difference between the Vyakhyanam and Vritti. Vyakhyanam gives you the akshepaha and samadhanam. Vritti does not. Right? Therefore, these are the 5 points which the Vyakhyanam covers. Vyakhyana Panchalakshanam. Right? What about Vritti? Vritti briefly covers the first 4 points in Vyakhyanam. Not as elaborately, briefly, but it does not give the Akshepa and Samadhana. That is the main difference. Those of you who are looking at the Bhashyams, which you already done, for example, Undaka, Katha Bhashyam, we have not studied the Bhashyam, we have taken the ideas. But if you look at Sringeri website, the Vashyams are there. You will find that Undaka Bhashyam and Katha Bhashyam, the Purvapakshi objections are not taken into account. So they are Vritti. While Kena Upanishad, if you look at the Bhashyam, you'll find that the Vyakhyanams are, the objections are also there, the Khandanams are also there. Therefore, they are Vyakhyanams. Okay, I can see you reeling a bit, so I will stop here. Yeah. Any questions on this? It's very important for all future development, the ideas. Okay, now we will come to the text proper. So Shankaracharya begins the Bhashyam to the text with 3 Mangala shlokas. Right? These Mangala shlokas are not part of the Upanishad. These 3 Mangala shlokas are part of the Bhashyam. And therefore it goes to show Shankara's idea of how important he thought the Upanishad is, because he supplied his own Mangala shlokas also. So I will put this in the group later. For the time being, we will just chant the 3 Mangala slokas one by one. So I will chant very slowly and you can repeat. Yasmat jatam jagat sarvam
Yasmat
Yasmajatam
jagat
jagat
sarvam
sarvam
Yasmin eva praliyate.
yasmin deva
prapraliyate
praliyate
Yenedam dharyate chaiva.
yenedam
yemedam
Aryate chaiva
Jnanatmane nam tasmai jnanatmane namaha.
tasmai
tasmai
jnanatmane namaha.
So you're all advanced students. You can understand? Yasmat jatam jagat sarvam. Yasmin eva praliyate. What does it mean?
That
Born and sustained.
yes, that which gives rise to Jagat and that
That
into which the Jagat
Is
resolves.
resolves. So what is left?
Sthiti, the main
Sthiti.
sustained.
That is here. Yenedam dharyate chaiva. Yena idam dharyate cha eva. And that alone which sustains that jagat also. Tasmai jnanatmane namaha. To that jnanatmanaha, to that Paramatma, my namahas, my obeisances. Sort of beautiful little sloka. That's the first Mangala sloka. It is not part of the Upanishad. I will put it in the group afterwards. So this is not just a Mangala sloka. Whenever you want to recognize Brahman, there are two ways. Tatastha Lakshanam and
Swarupa.
Swarupa Lakshanam.
Lakshanam.
So what is Tatastha Lakshanam? You are trying to recognize Brahman as Jagat Karanam. And here he says, Yasma Jatam Jagat Sarvam. From which power, from which Brahman, the entire Jagat has been born. Enedam Dharyate Cha Eva. By which Brahman the whole universe is sustained. Yasmin Eva Praliyate. Into which Brahman the whole universe will resolve. Tasmai Jnanatmane Namaha. To that Brahman, I offer my namaskara. So this is Tatastha Lakshanam. Okay. Now, in this sloka, the first quarter, Yasmat Jatam Jagat Sarvam, Yasmin Nev Praliyate, Yenedam Dharyate Cha Eva, is Tatastha Lakshanam. Okay, because it points out Brahman by introducing the Jagat. By saying this is Jagat, and therefore Jagat Karanam is Brahman. So this is Tatastha Lakshanam. Why? Because Jagat is not permanent. It can come and go, but Brahman remains. Therefore, this is Tatastha Lakshanam. And then he says, Tasmai Jnanatmane Namaha. So this Jnanatmane, the word Jnanam, he uses to remind us of Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, which we will see later in the Upanishad, right? But he has borrowed that from later in the Upanishad. So he says Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, which is what? Swarupa Lakshana. And therefore, in this one sloka, what has he done? He has not only given his obeisances, Mangala sloka it is. In the same Mangala sloka, he has defined Brahman both as Tatastha Lakshanam, using Tatastha Lakshanam and using Sarupa Lakshanam. Therefore, this first Mangala sloka is Ishvara Namaskar, including giving the definitions. Okay. With this, we'll stop for today because the second Mangala Sloka is regarding the Guru Parampara. That also will require a bit of explanation. And the third Mangala Sloka is intention of what he wants to do. So that also will take some time. Therefore, with this, we'll stop for today. Any questions?
May I request Raviji to give it this in the slide form, like what includes in samasa or vyakyan, or
I've
that
already
becomes
no. Those things require spoon feeding. You should read. I mean, you should hear this loka, hear the class, make your own notes.
okay.
No, no spoon feeding. Because if that happens, then there'll be no effort on your. That's the format of this class. Any amount of questions are welcome. If you don't remember the questions now, you can put in the group. I will answer. But ultimately, unless you make your own notes, how will you revise?
Okay,
Okay.
got it.
So with this, we'll stop for today. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat
Purnat
Purnamudachyate
Purnamudachyate
Purnasya
Purnasya
Purnamada Purnam
Purnamada
Eva Vasishyate Om Shanti
Om
Shanti
Shanti Shanti
Shanti
Shanti
Om Tat Sat Om Namah Shivaya. Thank
Om
you for your
Namah
patience.
Shivaya. Thank you, Acharya.
Om Namah Shivaya.